Let's see. I think we're live on Instagram on the Hillel Neuer account. Anybody out there? We're waiting a few minutes, waiting about 2 minutes till we start going live on our other accounts. Yes, we're on. Noam has joined, and Deep has joined, and Carson Diebert has joined. Great, good to see you guys. We're just waiting a minute or two. I'm going to ask my colleagues to let me know when we're live on everything. And see, Ron has joined. Inbal, we're live on everything. All right, hey everyone. Welcome to the final live broadcast of UN Watch's 2021 campaign. I'm really delighted that you joined and thank everyone who's participated. We are live now on YouTube and Facebook of UN Watch, Facebook of my account, Hillel Neuer. We're live on Instagram for UN Watch, according to what my people tell me. And we are live on the Hillel Neuer Instagram, where I'm looking, and Sir Benz says hello, and Aviva says Happy Hanukkah. Happy Hanukkah to you, Aviva. Great to see you. And thank you, Ron. Ron says I'm a champ. Thank you. So we have a lot to talk about. While we're waiting, I'll just wait a moment or two till other people join. And while we're waiting, I just want to mention, if you go on our Facebook account and our Twitter, you will see that we just broke a story. And if you go to unwatch.org, breaking news, the United Nations General Assembly is about to condemn Israel today in 3 separate one-sided resolutions. And one of those resolutions is a text that refers to the Temple Mount, the holiest site in Judaism, solely by its Muslim name, Haram al-Sharif. And there is no mention of the fact that Temple Mount is also the holiest site in Judaism. So a resolution of the United Nations to be adopted today will effectively seek to erase the connections between the Jewish people and Jerusalem. And I'll ask all our people in the room not to be texting while we're there as much as they can. Tonight is, I find it ironic that the United Nations is about to condemn Israel in 3 resolutions, and one of the resolutions is seeking to erase the connections of Judaism to its holiest site, referring to the Temple Mount as only in the Muslim name Haram al-Sharif, because tonight happens to be the 4th night of Hanukkah. And what happened on Hanukkah? In the year 167 before the Common Era, so a little over 2,000 years ago, the evil emperor Antiochus sought to outlaw Judaism, and the Maccabees resisted, they revolted, they defeated Antiochus, and they rededicated the ancient Jewish temple. And on this same time, on this same day, it's the 4th night of Hanukkah, it's the middle of Hanukkah, the United Nations is effectively going to say that Judaism does not have a connection to its holiest site where the temple stood 2,000 years ago. So I tweeted the following. I said, in 167 BCE, Antiochus outlawed Judaism. Today, the United Nations seeks to outlaw Israel. Well, the Jews survived Antiochus, and my bet is that the Jews will survive the UN and its Human Rights Council. Okay, before we give you an update on our campaign, let me just note that those of you who are following the UN Watch Instagram, because we have people on the Hillel Neuer Instagram, we have people on Facebook and YouTube, but those who are following the UN Watch Instagram, tomorrow we're in for a treat. Our Morris B. Abram fellow, Hannah Hyams, will be taking over our Instagram feed. She'll be taking over the Instagram account, showing you a day in the life of a UN Watch fellow. Our fellowship, the Morris Abram Fellowship, is a wonderful opportunity for young people who've just finished their first degree or who finished it a year or 2 ago. It's an opportunity to come to Geneva for a year. It's a paid fellowship. Come to Geneva and work with me and our team and do everything that we do, help write speeches and help write draft social media posts and help edit videos and speak at the United Nations. It's an incredible opportunity. If you're about to graduate or you just graduated and you're very into the work of UN Watch, please apply for our fellowship. next year. And look out on Instagram tomorrow. Follow the UN Watch Instagram page, and Hannah will show you the life of a fellow in Geneva. So that's tomorrow. Okay, today's live. What's up ahead? We have an update on our campaign. This is the last event of our campaign. We have a word or two from me about what is up ahead, the future of UN Watch in 2022, which is coming upon us in a month's time. Today is the first day of December, so in a month's time it will be 2022. And finally, I will get to your questions. And I'm looking at the folks at the Hillel Neuer account. And Strange Development asks, why not more people than, well, I don't really know what that says, but many of you watching on the Hillel Neuer Instagram page asked all kinds of questions, and I'm going to try to get to as many of them as I can, so thank you for all of that. Okay, an update on our fundraising campaign. This is our annual campaign. This is the last event of our annual campaign. The purpose of the campaign is to support the vital work of UN Watch. What does UN Watch do? We are a small, independent, nonprofit organization. We monitor the work of the United Nations by the yardstick of its own charter. We combat anti-Semitism and anti-Israel bias at the United Nations, and we defend the true principles of human rights and champion victims worldwide who are often neglected at the UN. That is what we do. Now, with your help, in our annual campaign, so far, we have raised, get ready, drum roll please, we have raised nearly $970,000. Our target is $1 million, so it means we're almost there, but we've raised $970,000. That's supporters from around the world, from Australia, America, Canada, Gibraltar, you name it. You are an incredible group of supporters from around the world, and I really want to thank you for your generous support. Those of you who have donated, whether it's $5, whether it's $18,000 or more. We've got donations from around the world of all kinds of sums. Everything helps. Your support truly, as I've said before, is the wind in our sails. You'll see I'm going to come up to various questions. People ask me, how do we endure? How do we go on with all the hate and hostility at the UN? The fact that you are giving us your support, whether you're liking our work, sharing our work, sending encouraging words, signing our petitions. Go to unwatch.org/database. You'll see an incredible list of petitions all around the world. Please sign our petitions. But your support and your financial support enables us to go along. It's the wind in our sails. So we still have, in this broadcast, nearly $30,000 to raise to reach our target. We're almost there, thanks to your help. We want to reach our goal. You can help us by donating. You could be a student. You can donate $5. It means a lot. I spoke about the temple. When they built the tabernacle in the desert, everyone gave their half shekel. So it wasn't a lot of money, but this way everyone could participate. You can give just $5. That's your way of participating. Even if you're a retiree or a student or you don't have a lot of money, just $5. Our campaign was to reach a very large volume of people, and you will become our partner. So please help us raise our target. We have nearly $30,000 to raise by the end of our live broadcast. I know that you can do it. I see people are joining live. And someone, B.A. Combe, says he loves the haircut. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Anyway, if you love the haircut, show your love by sending us $5 or more. That would be great. So if you want to donate, go to unwatch.org/donate. Once again, that's unwatch.org/donate, and you can support the work of UN Watch. Okay, let me say a few words now on the future of UN Watch as we're about to begin 2022. What's up ahead in the future? And indeed, one of our questions that we got from Umnon21 is exactly that. What is the biggest challenge that you and UN Watch will face in 2022? So let me share with you what I believe is our biggest challenge. And the truth is, you don't always know until the year begins, but so far, the biggest challenge for a group that is combating anti-Semitism and anti-Israel bias is what I'm calling the Inquisition. What's the Inquisition? Well, you know, in the Middle Ages, it was the Catholic Church in Spain primarily, but also in other countries, used to torture people who were accused of being Jews, who might have converted, and they didn't trust them, and they tortured them, and they burned them at the stake. It was really horrific, and it lasted for hundreds of years. The UN Human Rights Council, where we're based in Geneva, Switzerland, right next to the Human Rights Council, we're the leading group speaking out against that body's injustices. In May, the PLO and Pakistan joined together to create a commission of inquiry that singles out Israel. It was right after the conflict in May, where Hamas fired 4,000 rockets at Israel. A terrorist group fired 4,000 rockets, and Israel responded in a very surgical way. Indeed, even Matthias Schmel, the head of UNRWA in Gaza, when he was interviewed on Israeli TV, he said Israel's strikes on Gaza were very precise, and with only a few exceptions, they did not hit any civilians, which is amazing. Israel had, I think, thousands of strikes on Gaza. They were on the bombs. Israel was striking the rocket launchers, the terrorist tunnels. And even the head of UNRWA Gaza admitted that Israel did not target civilians and did not hit civilians. And he said it was actually very impressive. He said in those words, it was very impressive how Israel did not, despite firing thousands of attacks on Gaza, it was all at the terrorists, not at civilians. He was so condemned by Hamas for speaking the truth, he had to give up his job. He's now no longer working at UNRWA. He had to leave Gaza. He was declared persona non grata in Gaza. So the reality, as even the head of UNRWA declared, was that Israel was fighting back against the rockets, against the terrorists. But the Human Rights Council believes the opposite. Led by the PLO in Pakistan, they created a commission of inquiry that ostensibly looks at both sides, but the Human Rights Council session and the inquiry is really targeted at Israel. And the goal is to say that in the conflict in May, Israel committed war crimes and crimes against humanity. And this commission of inquiry is going to gather information, and it's supposed to be used in a court of law, and it's going to be forensic evidence that they could use it to send to The Hague, the International Criminal Court, and other courts around the world that have universal jurisdiction, whether it's the UK, whether it's Belgium, South Africa, jurisdictions like that, the Netherlands, and Spain, possibly Switzerland. And the idea is to demonize Israel, to use the method of lawfare to erode Israel's ability to defend itself. And the Human Rights Council is going to be gathering evidence. They have a team of about 20 lawyers and other investigators who are building the case against Israel to demonize Israel. In addition to looking at the conflict in May between Israel and Hamas, they will also be looking at what they call, quote, systematic discrimination on the basis of religion, race, etc. In other words, the Commission of Inquiry is going to accuse Israel of apartheid. Right? The word du jour, the word of the day that the enemies of Israel, those who hate Israel, whether it's Iran or Syria or Libya or terrorist groups, or there's apologists in the West like Ken Roth of Human Rights Watch, who put out a 200-page report accusing Israel of apartheid, a word he doesn't use against anyone else. If Hamas has 0 Jews in Gaza and the Palestinian Authority has 0 Jews under their jurisdiction, and if you go across the Middle East where 850,000 Jews lived in Iraq, Algeria, Syria, Egypt, they're all gone, right? The only country that's going to be accused of apartheid is Israel, where you can find millions of Arabs living there. There's an Arab party that is part of the coalition government. Arabs serve on the Supreme Court. And even in the West Bank, where there are complex issues there, the conflict there is territorial, it's political, it is not racial. Ken Roth and the haters know that. But this Commission of Inquiry is going to implement their lie, their narrative, and is going to accuse Israel of apartheid. How do we know what the Commission of Inquiry is going to do? Well, who did they appoint? They could have appointed objective people. Then it would be hard for critics like myself to say the Human Rights Council isn't fair. They could have appointed a person who's known to be fair and balanced. They didn't do that. They're not even trying, right? They're not even trying. The person they appointed to head this commission is Navi Pillay. She was the High Commissioner for Human Rights for about 5 years in Geneva. I know her work very well because I monitored it routinely. She hates Israel. She accused Israel of having perpetual disdain for international law, right? So the head of the Commission of Inquiry that's going to examine whether Israel or Hamas committed crimes has said on the record, Israel has perpetual disdain for international law, and she's the head of the inquiry. So it's going to be a totally biased thing. What is UN Watch going to do about it? Briefly, we are going to demand that Navi Pillay steps down. We have a legal brief because she's a biased commissioner. We're going to make submissions to them, even though we know they're going to be ignored. We're going to be making submissions to this inquiry. We'll publish them. We're going to have a dedicated website on unwatch.org. You will have a dedicated webpage that will tell you all about this Commission of Inquiry, why it's biased, and you will be able to get all the key information about it. We're going to have events when they report. So we will be the leading place to get information about this biased commission of inquiry, which to my mind is not a commission of inquiry, it's the Inquisition. Why do I say that? Because all the other commissions of inquiry last for half a year or a year, and then they end. This commission of inquiry has no end. There is no term limit. It goes on forever. It reports to the Human Rights Council in Geneva, the General Assembly in New York, and it goes on forever. This is now the most anti-Israel body in the entire United Nations, which is saying a lot, right? The most anti-Israel body in the United Nations is now this commission of inquiry of the Human Rights Council, and we will be at the lead in confronting its hypocrisy, abuses, double standards, and responding to it. So check us out. Other things briefly, because I'm getting indications that we're running out of time in the future. UNRWA. UNRWA, as you know, we're putting out reports. It's the UN Refugee Agency for Palestinians. They have their own agency. The UNHCR is 18,000 people for 60 million people, and UNRWA is 30,000 people for 5.7 million people. UNRWA teachers demonize Israel. They glorify Hitler. They spread anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. They incite to support Hamas and terrorism on a routine basis. Our reports, go on unwatch.org, exposed 113 UNRWA preachers of hate. And I went to Brussels. I gave the information to the donors, your countries, in Canada, the US, the UK, the EU, all Western countries are giving hundreds of millions of dollars to UNRWA, including the United States, which is giving $318 million to UNRWA. So what are we doing about it? Well, I'm very happy to see that the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, raised the issue yesterday at the Security Council, said that she raised the issue of anti-Semitism to the Commissioner General of UNRWA. So she's taken our material and she's raised it to the head of UNRWA and the work of Impact SC, which does great work on exposing biased textbooks. But she said we all need to support UNRWA. A bit of a disconnect there. We need to see a more serious approach from the United States to hold UNRWA to account. We will be leading the fight to hold UNRWA to account. Briefly, we are helping human rights dissidents around the world who never get their day in court. We have our annual Geneva Summit for Human Rights. Please visit genevasummit.org. See the incredible human rights heroes whom we've brought to speak. We're planning to have our Geneva Summit, was held last year online. This year we're planning to do it in person. Not a simple thing, but it's scheduled for spring. More information will come. Check out our website, genevasummit.org, and go to its new and expanding social media, Geneva Summit on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Follow Geneva Summit, get more information. We're going to have a very interesting event next week on Wednesday, December 8th. Geneva Summit will launch a special campaign for a human rights hero. Check it out. Finally, a few things briefly. We're going to be monitoring the expanding role of China at the UN. We hope to have an op-ed coming out soon exposing the election of a recent Chinese official to an important body. We are fighting the abusers, members of the Human Rights Council, China, Russia, Cuba, Venezuela, Pakistan, don't belong on the Human Rights Council. We will lead the fight to expel them from the Human Rights Council. We already have 180,000 people who signed our petition on change.org to expel Venezuela. Please sign and look out. Finally, in March, as the Commission on the Status of Women at the United Nations meets for its annual session, when they finish, they will then bring in the new members, and already elected last April was the Islamic Republic of Iran, the worst country in the world, one of the worst, on women's rights, forces women to wear the hijab, and so many other ways that they subjugate women and treat them as second-class citizens. They will be joining the UN Women's Rights Commission. We will be leading the fight to confront them, working with human rights heroes, women's rights heroes like Masih Alinejad, who confronted the Swedish foreign minister a few days ago. Follow Masih Alinejad, she is amazing. All right, friends, with that, we now go to the Q&A. And I see that my colleagues are looking at the time. Let's see how much time we have. Well, I'm supposed to have 20 minutes. If not, you can tell me, but we're going to try to do at least 15 minutes of Q&A. Let's see how far we go. If not, you can drop me a note or something and let me know if my advisors tell me otherwise. Okay. Judging Judy asks, how was UN Watch started and why? Well, Judy, you can go to youtube.com/UNWatch, youtube.com/UNWatch. Go to the UN Watch channel, see the pinned video. The video that's on the main page. If you're watching on YouTube, you're already on our page. But if you see the main page of YouTube, you will see a new video that we did explaining the story of UN Watch. Please check that out. But briefly, the story of UN Watch, we were started by the incredible late Ambassador Morris Abram. He was one of the great civil rights leaders of the 20th century, worked arm in arm with Martin Luther King. He was appointed U.S. ambassador to the United Nations in Geneva. At the conclusion of his term as permanent representative, Ambassador Abram had the idea to create UN Watch. For the first time, an independent body would monitor the United Nations according to its own charter, fight anti-Israel bias, fight anti-Semitism, defend the true principles of human rights. That is the story of UN Watch. It was started by Morris Abram. I joined in 2004, so next year will mark my 18th year at UN Watch. We were chaired for the past 20 years by Ambassador Alfred Moses, another great supporter of human rights and international law. Isaac Shine Artist asks, how is a nonprofit like UN Watch able to speak at the UN? Keep up the great work, says Isaac. Thank you, Isaac. One great thing at the Human Rights Council, now we're critics of the Human Rights Council, but one great thing is that we are able to speak. It's not obvious. You know, at the United Nations is a club of countries, but at the Human Rights Council, it's an anomaly, it's an exception. NGOs, nonprofits, human rights groups are able to speak. And that's one of the great things. We get to speak. How are we able to speak? We had to apply for the status. It's called non-governmental organization. We applied for it about 19 years ago in 2002. The vote, I think, was 10-9, 19 countries vote. We got in. Today, if the vote were held, we wouldn't get in because the body that decides who gets in is composed of evil countries. Typical members are Iran, Nicaragua, Turkey is the vice chair. It's one of the worst composition of any UN body is the Committee on NGOs. So it's very hard to get admitted today, but we got admitted 19 years ago. For now, we're there. That's how we got in. Obviously, the dictators hate the fact that we're there. They try to silence us. They try to suppress us. They try to censor us. They try to intimidate us. We're still there, and we are not going to give up. Island Gal Baby says, thank you. We appreciate the work you do, and she gives hearts. Thank you, Island Gal Baby. I appreciate that. Naveed Rami says, will we see the Islamic Republic of Iran collapse? Well, I do believe we will see the evil regime of Ayatollah Khamenei, which inherited the evil regime of Ayatollah Khomeini, which represses their own people, kills thousands of protesters, and tortures their own people, subjugates their own people. I believe that regime will collapse. I firmly believe they will collapse. When, we don't know. The Soviet Union, which was an evil empire, lasted more than 7 decades. But finally they collapsed. No one believed in it anymore. Already we see in Iran, people know the regime is against them. They say we don't want to spend our money on terrorists, supporting terror in Gaza, in Lebanon, in Yemen, in Iraq. Use the money to give our own people water. So I stand with the Iranian people. I stand, as I mentioned before, with Masih Alinejad, one of the great human rights heroes. And we stand with all the Iranian people who are heroically resisting the regime. And we hope that its fall will come soon. Gabo Schlaf asks, what can be done to prevent the UN General Assembly from being corrupted? Gabo, nothing can be done. The General Assembly is made up of 193 countries, and that country gets to send their own representatives. Actually, today the Credentials Committee is going to meet and decide who represents Burma, Myanmar, and who represents Afghanistan. The Taliban have requested credentials. If the UN, this committee, decides to allow the Taliban to represent Afghanistan, well, it's going to be like Iran and Saudi Arabia. Extremists, terrorists are going to be, misogynists are going to be representing a country at the UN. So as long as dictatorships control China, Russia, Cuba, Saudi Arabia, Venezuela, etc., they get a seat at the UN. Sometimes you can block their credentials, doesn't usually happen, and they are very corrupt. And sadly, there is very little to do other than trying to get our democracies to push back. So when it comes to elections at the Human Rights Council, we try to get democracies to push back against the evil regimes. And that is the best thing you can do, is get our democracies to push back against the evil regimes. I'm going to take a drink of water, and we have about 10 minutes left. Try to get to as many questions as I can. All right. Maram Orr asks, is there an eligibility standard to be elected to the Human Rights Council? Well, officially there is, according to Resolution 60/251, adopted on March 15th, 2006. Members of the Human Rights Council are obliged to uphold the highest standards of promoting and protecting human rights. So in theory, the Human Rights Council is supposed to be made up of countries that promote and protect human rights. In reality, it's the complete opposite. The worst dictators want to be there to make sure they'll never get condemned or criticized. They do not want to be shamed on the world stage, so they make political deals behind closed doors. They trade political favors. I vote for you, you vote for me, and the worst regimes get elected. That is the reality. It's very sad. We are fighting it as best as we can. Maram also asks, do countries report on their own progress? Human Rights Council members are no different than other countries. Every country is obliged to give a report once every 4 or 5 years. It's called Universal Periodic Review, only once every 5 years. And the ones doing the reviews are the fellow countries. So when China gets reviewed, Saudi Arabia is praising China. And when Saudi Arabia gets reviewed, China is praising Saudi Arabia. It's a mutual praise society. So the only one who takes the reviews seriously are the democracies who need the reviews least because they already have checks and balances. Okay, moving on quickly. Lost Stories asks, China is a dictatorship. Can they be thrown off the Security Council? Sorry, bad news. You will not remove China from the Security Council. They're there to stay. We need to combat their malign influence at the UN. They've taken over numerous UN bodies. There's a Chinese official head of the International Telecommunications Union and the Food and Agricultural Organization, and most recently the Civil Aviation Authority in Montreal and other bodies. We are pushing back because they are seeking to corrupt these bodies. The World Health Organization, China has enormous influence there, and we saw what happened last year, 2 years ago nearly, when the head of the World Health Organization, the WHO, Dr. Tedros, did not want to pin the blame on China. Okay. Laser Intro asks, how do you not go crazy from the ignorance people display regarding Israel and the Jewish people? My job is to stay focused. We're speaking out for the equal treatment of all nations. We're opposing anti-Semitism, and our best job is to bring the facts, and we try to remain calm and collected and factual, and that is our job. So I try to be a good Canadian and stay cool-headed at all times, unless the moment calls for passion, then we try to bring some passion to the table. Karine Farjan says, thank you, with a smiley face with hearts. Thank you, Karine. Adam Sharabi says, how do you debunk the Palestinian right of return claim? Well, Adam, millions of Palestinian descendants of those who once lived in what is today Israel claim the right of return. They live in Jordan. Millions live in Jordan. There are some living in Lebanon, Syria, Gaza, living there. There's also those in Gaza and the West Bank. They're living in Palestine. They claim a right of return, but that is false. There is no right under international law for people who fought a war and who either fled or pushed out, depending on your narrative. There is no right for them to return, especially not their descendants. If you want to read, I have with me a book that I'm reading now, one of the great books. Read The War of Return. That's by Adi Schwartz and Einat Wilf, an amazing book. Read the second chapter, everything you want to know about refuting the false claim of return, which the Palestinian belief in returning to Israel is one of the major obstacles, if not the major obstacle, to achieving peace in the region. People say settlements are obstacles. The false belief that millions of Palestinians will demand to overrun Israel is a major obstacle to signing a peace treaty with the Palestinians. Okay, Just Hoovy asks, what can we do to help Israel's image? Isabella Franson asks, what can someone on the outside do about the UN mistreating Israel? And Nick J. All the Way says, how do you suggest we address the Squad's contempt for Israel? Which the Squad, for those who don't know, are the members of Congress that include AOC and Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, and some others. All right, how do you respond to those who are telling lies about Israel? Tell the truth. That is all you should do, is get the facts, tell the truth. You can get a lot of information on our website, unwatch.org, unwatch.org/database. You get enormous information about the UN. But I would ask, AOC is the leader of the progressives, one of the leaders of the progressives in America today. I would ask AOC, if you support women's rights, why would you side with Hamas and not with Israel? If you support freedom of speech, you want to side with Israel, not with Hamas. If you support gay rights, then you support Israel. You don't support Hamas, which is homophobic and tortures and kills gays. If you support freedom of assembly, freedom of religion, you stand with Israel, not with Hamas. So I would say that if you believe in progressive values, then with all of Israel's imperfections, and it's very imperfect, but of all of Israel's imperfections, it is a liberal democracy that does respect and uphold women's rights, gay rights, freedom of speech, and Hamas and the Palestinian Authority do not. Ask Nizar Banat. He was someone who criticized Abbas, and the police came to arrest him, and they beat him, and they killed him. Okay, so just tell the truth, and that's the best thing you can do. A few more. I have about 5 minutes left. I'm going to try to get through as many questions as I can. Tammy Biggs says, just wanted to say thank you for everything you're doing. Thank you, Tammy. I appreciate your support. Lital Leon says, given, she said it in Hebrew, but I'm translating for her because I speak Hebrew. Given the rising anti-Semitism, do you think a second Holocaust is likely? So that is a very poignant question. I lost family in the Holocaust. My grandparents' family on both sides lost, their whole families were wiped out virtually. On my father's side, my grandfather and grandmother's families were all murdered. So I really hope a second Holocaust will never happen again. But I have to say that seeing the hatred in countries like Iran, which it is stoking in Gaza, and seeing the anti-Semitism that's being taught in UNRWA schools, okay, they are glorifying Hitler. UNRWA teachers are glorifying Hitler. And seeing in Europe the irrational obsession with demonizing Israel as a stand-in for demonizing Jews, I get very nervous. So history shows that you could never downplay the threat of anti-Semitism. And we saw in the last war in Gaza, Jews being attacked in the streets of New York, Los Angeles, London, places that were considered quite safe for Jews. So I think we should be very concerned about anti-Semitism, and we should fight that ancient hatred as best as we can. All right, a few more questions. Ellie ASF asks, you challenge the worst of humanity in the out and open. Are you not scared of retaliation? We do get silenced a lot at the UN. They try to silence us. We're going to keep on going. That's all I can tell you. S. Adele Bardin says, in your line of work, do you ever feel overcome by rage? What keeps you sane? Well, Adele, what keeps us sane, I have to say, is the support of so many of you around the world. As I'm looking at my own Instagram account, there are thousands of people joining. We have 20,000 on my Instagram. On our YouTube, we have millions of views. And we have 130,000 following on my Twitter account and UN Watch Twitter account, over 100,000. So what keeps us sane and encouraged is the support that we get from all of you. We know we're doing the right thing, and we are just going to refute the lies. Quickly, a few other questions, and then I will come to the end of our campaign. Very briefly, Sarah Franzen asks, what do you do to relax your mind after a hard day fighting anti-Semitism? Sarah, I like to listen to music of all kinds. I like to get on my bicycle when I can. If I'm visiting Israel, I like to put my feet in the water, in the beach, go swimming. I like to, sometimes if I have a chance, to play ice hockey, which sometimes I get to do in Switzerland. All right, Tom says, Tom 2006, what keeps you motivated to support the existence of Israel? Well, it's who I am. I grew up as a proud Jew and a proud supporter of Israel. My grandparents were Zionists in the 1930s and believed in the right of Jewish self-determination. So it's really who I am and where I came from, but it's also what I believe is right. I believe that just as France has a right to exist, Japan has a right to exist, and Congo has a right to exist, Israel has a right to exist. Israel, an ancient people, as recognized in 1922 by the League of Nations, which recognized the historic connection of the Jewish people to their ancient homeland, I believe it is a just cause that Israel has a right to exist. And especially when we talk about anti-Semitism, we need a place in the world where Jews can go to if they need to. 3 final questions and then we're done. Mindy Baer says, I wish I can share your stories on Instagram. Can you make them shareable? Well, Mindy, I spoke with our experts on the UN Watch team, including Vanina, and she informs me, as I thought, that UN Watch stories, that Instagram stories are normally not shareable. Instagram posts are shareable. So if you want to share our stories, you can screenshot and you could share that. Ella Jonas asks, what do you expect from Israel's future at the UN? I think it's an uphill battle. We see that countries are continuing to condemn Israel, but some hope, Ella. The Abraham Accords, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Morocco, just signed major agreements with Israel and are doing a lot of things together. I hope that that will spill over at the United Nations. We saw some indications, some events being done together. I hope we will see more of that, because it is Hanukkah and the light is there to dispel the darkness, so I'm looking at the light and I hope we'll see more of it. Finally, Davies Christopher. Well, I'll take 3 questions very quickly. Davies Christopher says, will you come to the UK and give a conference talk about Israel and the work you do? Davies, I'd be delighted to come to the UK, depending on the corona restrictions. Send me a letter, send me a proper email, go on our website, you can send in a message, send a proper request, and we consider every proper request seriously. Final 2 questions, and this is we're done. Helen Channery says, do you take interns? We do. As I'm speaking, Ben, right? Ben, our intern, who will be interning with us soon, is taking notes and will be with us soon in Geneva. But we do take interns throughout the year. Please go to our website. You can become an intern, and it's a great experience. Carson Diebert asks, how can people, particularly students, get involved beyond donating? Well, I just mentioned internships. That's a great way for students to get involved. Go on our website, unwatch.org. Check out internships. You can also share our stuff. If you're a student, you know Instagram better than I do. So all students out there, go on our Instagram page, Facebook, if you still use it, probably don't. But go on our Instagram page, take screenshots, share our stuff, like it, spread the word, sign our petitions. Okay, done with the Q&A. Let me take a brief sip of water, and then we're going to end our 2021 campaign. Okay, friends, I have 3 minutes left. All right. This now comes to the point where we conclude our 2021 campaign, and I'm going to look at open my computer and see what my colleagues who are running the back end of our campaign, where we needed to raise $1 million, see where we're at. Before I say the amount, I just want to thank the people who've worked so hard on this campaign. I want to thank Hannah and Chloe and Eileen and Shayla, who organized the campaign. They worked a tremendous amount of work, super long hours over weeks, and Simon and Ben and Dina and our graphic artist and our video people who've done tremendous work with social media posts and videos and campaigns and emails, and really a lot of work. It's the first time we've done an online campaign, and I want to thank our amazing team for all the work, dedicated work you've done. Thank you. Okay, I'm now able to announce the amount that has been raised for our campaign. The amount raised for our campaign, the official number, is $1,004,078. $1,004,078. We just made it. That is amazing news. All right, this means that thanks to your generous support, the work of UN Watch to hold the UN to account, to fight anti-Israel bias, combat anti-Semitism, defend the true principles of human rights, fight dictatorships, will continue for another year at least, and I'm sure for much more beyond that. But thank you so much for your support. We made it, and I want to thank all of you who donated, whether you gave $5, whether you gave $1,000, whether you gave $18,000. All of you are supporting our campaign. You helped us make it. Thank you so much. Please continue to support our work. Your support, as I said, is the wind in our sails. Please, to help UN Watch, beyond donating, you can follow us on social media. You can, we are on Twitter. We are on Facebook. We are on Instagram. Thank everyone following the Hillel Neuer account. I'm thanking everyone following the UN Watch account. And I'm thanking everyone following us on Facebook and YouTube. Share our material. Spread the word. Go on our website, unwatch.org/database. We have petitions going to the Prime Minister of the UK, President of France, the Prime Minister of Canada, urging them to combat anti-Israel bias, to defend the true principles of human rights. So thank you all for your support. It's been amazing. All I can say is thank you once again, and see you next time.